All right, so here we are with Cadence Pierce and Liz Holbrook as part of CSE Autism Awareness Month. Tony Venegas and Megan O'Brien here as well. And just give a second for everybody to introduce themselves, and then we will get started. And that way, that Cadence and Liz can both share their respective stories.
So, yeah, I'm Liz Holbrook. I'm the Director of Media Relations at the University of Evansville. And at the end of 2024, I was diagnosed with ADHD combination type and autism spectrum disorder level 2, along with previous diagnoses of generalized anxiety disorder and PTSD.
That sounds good. And Cadence?
Okay, I am Cadie Pierce. I am the Assistant Director of Athletic Communications at Wilmington College in Southwest Ohio. I am not actually diagnosed with autism, but a lot of the self-assessments and things are like, poke, go get evaluated. But I was diagnosed with severe attention deficit hyperactivity disorder back in the spring of 2021, along with current diagnoses of post-traumatic stress disorder, bipolar disorder, generalized anxiety, depression, and generalized epilepsy, along with previous diagnoses of schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, and surprisingly restless leg syndrome way back when. All because I couldn't stop moving my legs and it was annoying everybody around me.
Of getting there, but being able to share the stories and how we all deal with it, I think is important, and important to share that what we have here today. And Megan, we'll go with you next. If you just want to share a little bit about yourself.
I'm Megan O'Brien. I'm the Assistant Director of Athletic Communications at Monmouth, and I am now, having completed the CSC Diversity and Inclusion Fellowship, and anxious to help share the stories and all that stuff.
And then as for myself, I am Tony Venegas. I am one of the directors of athletic communications at Belmont Abbey College, which is right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been going, this is my 4th year at the college. And like Megan was saying, just want to be able to help share everybody's stories and being able to kind of spread the word about autism and kind of dealing with everything that kind of comes with that. And I know Liz and Cadie, you both have a lot to share. So, and you touched a little bit on that, but with that, we'll go ahead and get going with Liz here, kind of going back to her. Guess what was it that led you getting diagnosed? Because I know you just said that diagnosis came pretty recently.
Yeah, sure. Also, apologies if you hear my cat. He apparently also has a lot to say about this as well. So I've always known I was like different. I always felt like there were things that other people got really easily that I felt like I didn't understand. And my family also has a history of mental health things. My brother was diagnosed with ADHD and autism when he was in elementary school. And then my dad was diagnosed with, at the time, ADD, which has now been moved into ADHD in current frameworks when he was an adult. And he was also probably likely autistic as well. So at least in my family, it is very much a genetic thing, and it just kind of runs down from my dad into my brother and then me. I think the reason it didn't get caught in me as a child like it did my brother is because I didn't struggle in school all that much. I was pretty book smart. I was a teacher's pet, so nobody assumed I was really having problems, whereas my brother was pretty disruptive in class, so his got clocked pretty quickly because he was more on the hyperactive side, and I was more the other type of like single ADHD you can have is disattentive, I think, or basically you easily get distracted and you're easily kind of just like lost in your own thoughts. And that isn't as easy to visually see, especially in kids. And it's pretty commonly known that women generally get diagnosed later in life as well because of how women are socialized and the fact that girls are really good at masking, which is basically putting on the front that you're normal and you don't really have anything going on, but internally you're like a duck. Inside it's flapping, but on the outside you look like you're pretty cool and calm. But I ended up only recently getting diagnosed because now I finally have the time, the insurance, and the mental health team that was actually able to get me in for testing as well. My therapist here in Evansville is wonderful, and I've been working with her for a couple of years at this point now. And I initially went to her for just some childhood things that I wanted to like work through and get past. And we were talking about the dissociative spectrum. And she was just like, let's take this test with you real quick and see where you are on disassociating. And I scored so high, she's like, we should get you tested. That may be a good idea. So that's why I was able to actually go through the process at the end of 2024 and get a final official diagnosis.
Yeah, so I know you kind of you seem to really had to go through a lot just to. I mean, I know it seems like you kind of knew early on, but I'm sure it had to be kind of a relief, or at least gave you some peace of mind, like knowing for sure. I'm sure that knowing that you had this you had this diagnosis, and you can kind of move forward with that. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really relieving, especially because growing up, I felt like a lot of my mental health struggles were kind of brushed off because my brothers were so much bigger and more important. And growing up, we were pretty poor too. And there was a time where we didn't have health insurance. So my parents could only afford to take care of my brother's stuff because we didn't have the money to take care of my sister or I. And because we were doing fine, it's just like, okay, we'll take you to the free physical day once a year. And that's about all we can do for you outside of glasses. So it's nice to have it now and kind of work through things and realize, oh, that's why I would do that when I was younger. And it's like, oh, that's why these relationships broke down. Because the one thing I've really learned is that I feel emotions a lot more deeply and a lot more strongly than most people do. And because I didn't really have anyone to teach me emotional regulation growing up, I would kind of express those really strong emotions, not always in the best way. And so it broke down a lot of friendships and relationships in my life until kind of 2020-ish.
And Cadie, I'm going to swing it back to you because I see you nodding your head at a lot of what Liz was sharing. So if you want to touch on a little bit more about kind of what led to you getting diagnosed and just how all that started for you.
With me, the biggest thing was one of the biggest signs for me, and it came really late, and kind of what initiated my desire to get it. It was at the end, towards the end of the pandemic, and I'm like scrolling through social media, TikTok and Instagram reels and things, and just seeing all of the discussion on basically combined type autism ADHD. And like, I'm thinking back to my elementary school years. I had teachers, and I found out this when I was 36, when I was actually diagnosed. My student teacher in 4th grade knew within a week of him teaching me that there was something not quite right. He suspected it was either ADHD, brought it up to the counselors. 4th grade, my parents completely dismissed them. They were like, we don't want them on medication. we don't want any of that stigma, because this was the 90s. My dad was a teacher. My dad was very like, it's, you just have to keep them busy. But my mom, it was my mom's second marriage, and I was adopted by him when I was like, I think 9, because my biological father kind of up and disappeared when I was 5. But when Liz was talking about the whole dissociation thing, that was a big reason for the schizophrenia diagnosis. Was I was dissociating pretty much every time I got emotional. Like I would like completely like shut down and just shut off, and turned into like this real, like, I think primal would be the best way to describe it, where I'm purely driven by emotion. And yeah, I've had friendships fall apart because I don't understand, and I love and I feel very deeply as well. But I also like, it's there was a thing in college when I was at Youngstown State studying theater, where a lot of the people would kind of they would poke fun at me because I was always the last one to get the jokes, where they always said like the joke would go over my head like a helicopter, where everybody else picked up on it except for me, and it would usually take somebody explaining it to me, or I just would never get it.
I guess my question to you guys is, athletic communications can be chaotic. It can be crazy. What's the biggest challenge you guys find being on the autism spectrum, dealing with ADHD, to surviving in this field?
That's a good question, because I will be honest, because of the ADHD, I do thrive a little bit on chaos. I do like that things aren't the same, and I've noticed I'm really good under pressure, and I'm really good at solving problems when something like pops up and we have to change, particularly when it comes to like technology or finding different ways to do things. But I think sometimes the hardest part is the communication aspect of communicating with others within the office. It's not so much communicating with media or communicating with fans. That's generally never been an issue for me. It's trying to figure out some of the communication styles of your coaches or your coworkers, especially if they are someone that doesn't have a lot of experience around neurodivergent people, or don't really know the difference between being neurotypical and being neurodivergent. It can sometimes be hard to kind of find that middle ground for you, because I know I'm a bit of an over explainer. I always put too much in because I just want to make sure I'm getting absolutely everything across that I need to, just in case. And I realize a lot of people do a lot of skimming. Like, really good example recently with my baseball coach, I sent him an email about our media day plan for it, and he read through it and he got like what he needed from it, but I didn't realize he didn't read a couple parts where I wanted to do some stuff for our new players. So we just had to talk about it later. So sometimes it's just making sure you actually go and reconnect with people and talk to them and be like, okay, this is what I originally said. What did you get from it? What other questions do you have from me?
My boss at my previous school used to joke with me. I wasn't allowed to send emails out directly. He would have to like always like read through it first and then basically kind of like do a TLDR, because I'm the type of person who I have to be 100% clear, because any sort of ambiguity throws me into like panic mode and like that mental shutdown, where it's like, oh my God, because I am the person where I, like Liz was saying, how, she over communicates. I over communicate to make sure that there's absolutely no gray areas. Our conference has timeout regulations. I misunderstood them. And I'm like, and I like literally had to go down and like, okay, word for word, like this is what it's trying to say. And then I'm like, and I just literally sit there and go, came up with this. Because it's like, it's complicated, and it does, and I'm somebody who I thrive on complication, but it has to be but it has to make logical sense. Like if it doesn't make, like if it's just complicated for the sake of complicated, it's like, why? Whereas I would rather have something make logical sense, but be complicated to achieve a simple end goal. Because I have this thing, like I said, I don't mind complicated as long as the end goal is simple. Because like my big thing, I focus a lot on broadcasting, and our broadcasting system here that we work with, it's a very complicated setup on the surface. But when you realize that it's complicated on the surface, the operation is simple, and it's designed to get the job done and communicate everything that it has as effective as possible.
Yeah.
But I will agree that the biggest challenge for me in athletic communications, for me, it's I don't know how to communicate via the hierarchy structure. That's probably the biggest thing for me. Like I will talk to my boss, our AD and our associate AD, exactly like I would talk to my friends. And I'm sure that it sometimes will, I don't know how they feel about it. They've never, given me any clues, or they've never told me outright. Yeah. Okay. So with hierarchy, it's like, I don't know, like the higher up the hierarchy you go, the less likely I feel comfortable talking to you, because I don't know how to. Because I know consciously that they deserve more respect. I don't know how to communicate that. And that's also, another thing is I'm very prone to shoving foot in mouth, where I will say something and have it come out either completely wrong, or it's something I'm not even supposed to say or know. And I'm like, I'll just go and go, oh crap, I wasn't supposed to say that. I long have said that the filter between brain and mouth malfunctions about 95% of the times.
Yeah, I think we all have those moments, or just not just that, but also, at least for me, I mean, I've had to deal with some of that stuff too, at least in terms of sometimes what I think in my head doesn't really quite come out when I try to speak it, or sometimes my head is moving too fast and my mouth can't really catch up with that, which I've kind of struggled with that for a long time. And it's just something that I think you just everybody kind of has their own way of managing it and dealing with it. And I know it can be a challenge for some, and especially I think working in athletic communications too. I'll just add this. I think just the fact that there is also, I think just in general, such an attention to detail that I think with all of us, that I think it's stuff that we can pick up on pretty well that others may not as well. So I guess if anybody wants to hop in, I guess, would you kind of agree with that attention to detail can be a positive in terms of dealing with the day-to-day interaction at your respective schools?
I think my attention to detail, our president, when I actually said I'm not a traditionally creative person, and our president, who's a comm professor before she became president, is like, no, I think you're one of the more creative people I've met, because I have the ability to deconstruct, and in that deconstruction be able to recognize, oh, if we do this, it makes it easier. And then I'm not like when it comes to artwork, when it comes to video, I'm not like that level creative. But I mean, prior to getting into athletic communications, I worked in IT. And in IT, you have to have that attention to detail is absolutely necessary, because if you're not paying attention, something's going to go catastrophically wrong. But in this profession, I look at athletic communications, the attention to detail isn't so mission critical, where if we're not absolutely paying attention, it's not going to end the world. It's not going to end the world. It's not going to end our world. It's not going to be, it's just one minor blip, I feel like, in some ways. But the attention to detail, for me, I feel like the attention to detail, and especially if you can deconstruct, that's one of our greatest strengths.
Liz, anything else you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think especially at the D1 level, having that attention to detail is really key as an SID, especially when it comes to game notes and putting together media stuff for games. I'm the person that's going to take the time to go and research and find the last time we had the game where this exact situation happened. Like recently, I had to find for our women's basketball team, when's the last time we went 100% from the free throw line, but it was double-digit free throws. So went back through like 4 or 5 years of stats to find the exact game, the exact time, the exact number, and being able to like take that time to go and do that research and look through everything and find the detail is really helpful, because that's stuff that other people aren't going to find, probably aren't going to think about, and it brings something unique to the story of the student athletes and their game. And similar to Cadence, I also came from a different profession before I was in college athletics. I was a news reporter, where that was also really key, because a lot of times I would be trying to synthesize these really difficult concepts, whether they were like businesses and grants and loans or environmental testing, into like one story for regular people to read. So being able to look at all that detail, comb through it, and make it easy to understand for people that are at a lower level and wouldn't have that knowledge is a big skill to have. And I think the autism side of things really helps with that. I will say, though, sometimes the ADHD then kind of comes in and corrupts with that a little bit. Like I go through my game notes once I finish them a couple times, just because there's always one spot I've forgotten to actually update. Usually it's something small, like I didn't update the new nets after the past weekend, or I didn't remember to put in that one final score on the list of every single game we've had all year, because sometimes I just move through things too quickly. So I know to stop and double check myself to make sure everything is correct.
Oh, I've run into instances myself where it's like I was just doing last night our public address announcer scripts, because I'm in charge of writing those. And I'm like, I will literally sit there and like go through it, comb through it, and be like, da-da-da-da-da. I got all of it. But there's that one thing that I missed. And I've learned that whenever I run into those instances, I'm like, okay, how can I, like, I'll go back And because I'm a huge, huge perfectionist, I go back and I'm like, okay, how can I make this so I don't forget to change this? And I'm like, I live and breathe in Excel. I joke, my love language is spreadsheets because I will literally Concat is one of my favorite formulas. I love my ifs. And I'm just like, if I can't build it in Excel, I'm like, if I can't build it in Excel and it's not like a paragraph thing, I'm like, does it really need to be done?
And that's how you know autism is a spectrum, because I hate Excel. I cannot understand it. I'm not a math person. I don't get it. I'm the other side. I like words and I like language and I like art.
I'm like, my strongest subject in school was math. You look at my high school grade cards, I got A's all through algebra. I nearly flunked geometry. The only reason I passed it was because my teacher was our assistant girls basketball coach at the time, and I was doing their stats. I was doing automated computerized stats in Excel in 1997, 1998, 1999 for a high school team. And I went to Voc Ed right after I nearly flunked out of geometry. They did a math placement test. I got placed straight into calculus, or not calculus, pre-calc. The calc track is what it was. And I was like, when I took calc, no algebra 2 background, no trigonometry background. I stayed in pre-calc and calc. I just picked it up, figured it out and picked it up. And like, that was my thing. I got B's in stats, but that was because like my homeworks would be perfect because I would stumble through it, but I nearly flunked every test. And I'm like, statistics is like weird math. I like to jokingly call it. It's like, it's math, but it's not math. The biggest thing I hated about it was the fact that they had 6 different names for the same stinking formula.
But yeah, I'm literally the exact opposite. I struggled with math from 4th grade on, but I was really good at English. I was really good at history. I was usually okay at the other stuff. I also lived in a household where anything less than an A was catastrophic. B was like failing. So that probably didn't help. But it just goes to show that a lot of like the autism stereotypes don't apply to a lot of people, especially because a lot of the stereotypes are based on how boys and men like react, because like one of the big stereotypes is about trains, right? And the fact that like autistic boys are always really into trains. I have never cared about trains. My like special interest for most of my life has been reading, but because reading is seen as like this very normal thing, it wasn't shown as like a autism special interest. But I watched a video on YouTube pretty recently about like high masking women with autism. And he was just like, part of it is that women's special interests are generally stuff that people think is normal when it's like reading or Taylor Swift or a specific artist. So it just goes to show that stereotypes most of the time just don't fit most people that are actually in that category.
And actually with Liz, I'll go back to something that you said, like you said about men versus women and like how that's diagnosed. I will say, at least like as a man myself, like I could kind of see what you were saying about how different behaviors can. It's not that not everybody's in the same place on the spectrum, but at the same time, like the way that myself as a man could be treated and diagnosed would be different than Liz or Meg or Cadie or whoever or whoever. And that's definitely a perspective to kind of think about too. It's like we all, I think, have a lot of different factors that we have to kind of deal with and overcome. Some within, within your own home, some could be cultural. There's just a lot of different things to really kind of think about. And just, I also think just where you grow up. I mean, a lot of places, there are places where they have a lot more resources to be able to treat and manage this that frankly that others don't. And I'll just kind of share something real quick from myself kind of growing up. Like, I remember I kind of knew that I was different, and my parents have told me about this. They were really supportive of me, but it's like I was one of those where, like, I did not like loud noises. Like, that was something that, like, I like growing up, like fireworks. I hated fireworks. I'm better now. It's like some things you kind of outgrow, but still, it's just kind of stuff like that you have to kind of deal with. So that's just, like I said, everybody just kind of has their own journey in terms of how they figure that out. And I know, I guess, like, whether it's like dealing with student athletes, coworkers, like, who might come to you and talk about this. And again, anybody can chime in here, but I guess, how would you kind of handle that? But the best advice you can kind of give someone who's kind of dealing with that or still trying to figure something out.
I think part of it is finding the resources that make sense to you. Because for a long time, I didn't think I had autism because I didn't have a lot of those like sensory issues that a lot of people do. I was never bothered by like clothing fabrics. As long as like I know there's going to be a loud noise, I don't mind loud noises. Like, I like fireworks. I like sporting events. I like concerts. I like crowded environments where the energy is like super high and super fun, which in kind of the traditional autism stereotype, I shouldn't like that stuff. But then I looked a little bit further and I realized, okay, I actually do have some sensitivity. I'm sensitive to food textures, oddly enough. That is the one thing that I struggle with. Like, I can't eat spaghetti or really thin pasta for some reason. My mouth just doesn't like it. And I also struggle with like leftover pasta or not wanting to eat certain things, which actually isn't uncommon in autism. In autism, it's kind of joked about to have like your safe foods and like the easy stuff that like you eat the same meal for like a month and then you're like, I hate this. I don't want to eat it again. So you find a new safe meal and eat that for forever. But that was one of the things where it was just kind of like, well, I don't know if I'm actually autistic. But the more I kind of like learned and found things, it's like, oh, maybe I am, because I actually relate to a lot of this. Because I know Cadence mentioned this earlier, but one of the reasons I knew I wanted to get tested was because of TikTok. And I found people on TikTok that had super similar experiences to me that were diagnosed with ADHD or were diagnosed with both ADHD and autism. And it's like, oh, this is probably me too. I should really learn more about this. So honestly, I think for people that maybe don't have the medical resources or maybe the family support, YouTube and social media can be your best friend.
Yeah, building on that, I was one of the biggest, like, I don't have a lot of the same sensory difficulties. I don't necessarily mind loud sounds, but I came to realize that one of the biggest signs with me, and it happened while it was something that I had plenty of coaches point out, the louder the environment got, the louder I got. And that was kind of one of their signs that there was something off, was that. But the biggest thing that I learned, and I learned this while doing stats for volleyball and basketball, I can't do stats for volleyball and basketball because my collar has to be overpowering all of the environment, because my biggest thing is I can't filter. So, like, all the sounds in the environment sound the same level to me, which is why I've come to learn my volume will go up as the environment as the louder it gets in the environment. But like loud noises don't really bother me. I'm trying to think. But food textures do. I have like Liz was saying about how like small spaghetti, when it comes to pasta, I can't do meat sauce. I can only do, for whatever reason, I can only do Alfredo sauce. And I think that one kind of goes to the fact I don't like the texture of tomatoes, and like tomato sauce kind of bothers me, but it's weird. I love ketchup. Whenever I have pizza, I will occasionally suffer through the tomato sauce. But if they have if they have a white sauce option, I always go for the white sauce. But I also feel like that's part of why I gravitate so much towards dairy. Like I joke, there are two food groups that like make up 90% of my diet, and it's bacon and dairy. With like clothing is iffy, and it's also sometimes on a day-to-day basis. Some days it's just like I'll wear, like, we wear a lot of dry fit, and I'm like, one day the dry fit perfectly fine. A couple days later, it's like, can't wear this. I don't know what it is. But yeah, I think I don't even know what the question was.
It's fine. I think it's good for people to hear what kind of challenges you guys and somebody on this deals with. I guess my question to you guys is, so many of us in athletic communications are reliant on students to get things done on a game day. What's your best advice when you're dealing with a student who really wants to help, but is potentially on the autism spectrum? At one of my previous stops, I had a kid who came to me and said, I really want to work for you. And I gave them participation at a lacrosse game. And I handed them a roster, and I said, anybody you see step on the field, I want you to circle the number. And I got the sheet back, and the kid did not circle any numbers on the sheet. And then come to find out, when I assigned him to another game, his dad was there at a baseball game, and his dad wanted to be like next to him to help him with the scoreboard. And I'm like, when you're at a small school, you need students that are self-sufficient, but you don't want to tell somebody no because of an issue like this. So what's some good advice you guys would give somebody who's dealing with someone who's on the spectrum?
I mean, I think it's kind of similar to when you work with just regular students, as well as just finding what their interest is and the skills that they're good at and placing them in those positions. Like for me, when I volunteered and helped with my athletic department when I was an undergrad, because I wasn't a sports major of any sort, they would put me on stats and they would put me on PA, because the two things I was really good at was I was really good with numbers and I was really good with keeping track of things. And I was also really good with just presentation and public speaking, because I had been a performer since I was 5, because I have a background in violin and theater as well. So it's just finding what they're interested in and what they're good at and finding a position that fits for them. And sometimes it may not even be having them help with a game day. It may just be having them be someone that does bios, or being someone that helps you do nominations, or going through archives and putting photos and scanning them. So I think it can be pretty easy to incorporate people, but it also does kind of depend on where you are on the spectrum as well. there are like 3 different levels to autism. Level 1 is least support needs. Level 3 is the highest support needs. I will say someone that is at level 3 is probably someone you're not going to find in like a traditional classroom student setting. They're going to be someone that's going to be in a program that's like special for that. But we've had kids at other institutions I've been at where we've used them as like tickets or a floor sweeper or something that's a little bit easier and isn't like the biggest thing in the world, and you just need to scan or you just need to wipe.
I think I'm building on Liz. I think the number one thing is getting to know them a bit. If you can, if you have a student that you either know or suspect is on spectrum, talk to them. Set aside like an hour just to get to learn about them. Because 9 times out of 10, building on what Liz said about finding their interests, most of the time, autistic people do have those hyperfixations. If they're ADHD, they have that's like a trademark of ADHD is hyperfixations, and finding out where that lies, because like Liz was saying, it could be in writing, it could be in archival. Like I said, mine's in Excel, and I've been fighting with the XML files in the Stat Crew XML files because trying to build record books that are 100% automated for game records, your top 10s, season top 10s, career top 10s. And then even going one step beyond that to be like, what are your team's top 10 seasons? Trying to figure out those solutions sometimes is something that they can do, is like they can come up with. I always joke, sometimes autistic people are capable of thinking a little bit further outside the box. And that's very well maybe one of the strengths.
What have been some of the resources that you all have found that has really kind of helped you that you could potentially share with others?
I mean, for me, it's been online creators that have been the best resource. I'm not sure she's on TikTok anymore, but the first person that was on social media that I really connected with their experience of ADHD and autism was, her screen name is Cadiosaurus, and she talks a lot about D&D and ADHD in relationships, and particularly romantic relationships. There is also a YouTube creator. I know his first name is Chris. He makes YouTube videos with his wife. I cannot think of his last name though, but he does a lot of really good videos on autism and ADHD as well, because he also was someone that was late diagnosed with both. So actually his video on high masking autistic women, I watched it not too long after I got diagnosed, and that was really the light bulb for me. That was like, oh, yes, this is me. So for me, those were my 2 biggest resources, along with my therapist. I will say, if your school does have good medical insurance, go look and see who you can find in your community mental health wise. And I know it's tough. I'm lucky in that I'm in a fairly large city. So I had a lot of options and a lot of different providers that I could look through. And I somehow on the first try found the perfect person for me. But there's also a lot of great online resources too. You can take tests online that score you for ADHD and autism that are pretty common to find, or you could find different online communities as well. I will say Discord for me has been great in joining online communities that are focused around autism or just neurodiversity. There is a Reddit group that I'm in as well that's specifically for ADHD women that I have also really found helpful hearing from other people and their experiences. So those are kind of the resources that for me have been the most helpful, but I know it's kind of a little different for everybody, depending on what you have access to.
And Cadie, I'll let you jump in, because I think the first person that Liz had mentioned, I saw you react right away as if it's like, yeah, you've kind of dived into that same resource as well.
Katie Osborne was kind of my gateway. That's Katie Osaurus's name is Katie Osborne. She was kind of my gateway, and I actually found her through one of her series. I'm sure, Liz, you probably know exactly the series she's most known for, the What to Do with Your Burnt Out, Gifted and Talented. Because I am one of those burned out, gifted and talented millennials.
Yep.
Like Liz was saying about like the there's a couple of assessments. Really, those assessments were kind of like the ones that kind of like went poke, go. Because like for instance, the RADs are I scored in the high range. I think on my first one, probably like 3 or 4 years ago, I tested it like the high 210s, like 217, 218, 219. Now I'm down to like a 202, and like 240 is like the highest you can get. So like I'm in that range of this is one of the highest scores we've seen in the research. So you might want to go get evaluated. There's a lot of those screenings that you can do, and if you score on like the I don't know how to explain it, but like the higher, the likely high or moderate, you probably want to at least explore your options. I joke that I have great insurance. I probably have the best insurance in the country because I'm actually trying to, once I obtain, because I'm at Wilmington as a part-timer graduate assistant, I'm trying to transition off because I'm technically on Medicare, Medicaid, because I was classified disabled probably about 2017. Because while I worked in IT, I had significant job performance problems. And I actually had a boss say to me, "You have a disability, but you're not disabled." And I'm like, don't know how that kind of like adds up. But and I actually had an appointment to get evaluated, or to begin the process of evaluation, because one of the biggest things with me is I'm kind of isolated. Wilmington is kind of far. I joke with Wilmington, it's close to a lot, but in order to get there, you have to drive. And the place that I was going to was actually back home, and I was planning on, I'll just make the 4-hour drive back to Cleveland, go do the thing, come back. But like a week before the appointment, my car died. So I'm like, that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just trying to figure out where I can go in Cincinnati for it that's not going to require out-of-pocket payment, because a lot of the testing centers in Ohio do require that out-of-pocket payment. And like there was a place in Columbus that required like $3,000 out of pocket. They wouldn't even take insurance. So it's like, trying to find, and I've also read studies where if you do resonate greatly with multiple stories of people who are actually diagnosed autistic, that self-diagnosis is becoming more and more valid. But to get the professional assistance, employers are going to require that formal diagnosis. But from a this makes sense for myself because I get it. But it's also like, that line of self-diagnosis versus being professionally diagnosed, it's a tight line. Because like there are people who will say that, and they're not, they may have other things. And it's what I've always been advised is going to make my diagnosis more difficult is because of all of the other diagnoses I have.
Also, I did want to share some of the places that maybe you should stay away from when it comes to autism, because I know the most popular autism group in the United States is Autism Speaks. And Autism Speaks actually is not good for most autistic people because they think autism is something that needs to be fixed. And it's not. It's not something that needs to be fixed. We are not a puzzle missing a piece at all. We are just a different puzzle. So I would say
I would agree with that.
Yeah, do a little bit more vetting maybe of bigger institutions like that, because they may not be coming from the perspective of actual autistic people. They may be coming from the perspective of people that are parents that are neurotypical who have autistic kids and want them to fit into the mold. But I think it's just important to share some of that as well, because autism, unfortunately, is a bit of a divisive condition compared to others, just from the way some of the public messaging has been.
Yeah, it is.
So
it definitely is.
I know, whenever I see the puzzle piece, I'm like, no. I've gravitated more towards the infinity symbol. Mm-hmm. Almost like it's like a color spectrum infinity symbol, because it's no matter, it's because it goes back to what you had said earlier, we're all on different places on the spectrum. It's just a matter of, allowing, and it's one of the big things about DEI is just about finding places to enable people to succeed who don't fit the traditional mold. And I'm not, people who are on spectrum, we don't fit one stereotype. We all have different skill sets. We all have different abilities. We have different strengths. We have different weaknesses. Like I was saying earlier, I don't know if I finished my thought. I can't do basketball or volleyball stats without a headset that allows me to hear my caller. But I also have to have a caller that is absolutely they know what they're doing, because for me, when I get into the stat mode, I become monkey hear, monkey do.
Right.
I'm just bump, 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 bump. And I just kind of just go. It's when I do an IPA, I don't really think. I see, I read, I say, we're just going.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of great advice, a lot of great things to take away from all of this. And so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Liz, Cadie, thank you very much for sharing your stories. We hope that whoever does watch this down the road will get something out of it, and hopefully will provide being a resource to whatever it is that you all are dealing with. And of course, Meg, thank you for your help as well, facilitating and putting all this together.
Thank you guys for sharing.